Hello and welcome to another science video on acids and bases. This time we're going to look at neutralisation reactions continued. So the first thing I'd like you to do is get your page set up as usual with whatever data is there. Make sure you got yourself a pencil. Make sure you've got yourself access to an ion sheet. If not, you can either use the one up in my room with the little clouds, or you can look at the back of an exam paper, or you can just use the examples as I go. Okay. And then once you've done your keywords, which are the three chemical formulas, I'd like you to have a go at those starter questions. So if the video gets paused now, then attempt them and then check the answers on the next page. So here are the answers to the starter. Sulfuric acid is a strong acid. If you're in my room right now, you'll see that there's a pH display. So a strong acid is going to go red. Baking soda is a weak alkali, so it's going to be towards the right-hand side of that, and it's weak, so it's going to be between 8 and 10. Then we're going to name the salt. So remember the metal is the first name. So sodium plus nitric acid, well, nitrate becomes nitrate. Hydrochloric acid plus copper. So we're going to have the metal, copper, hydrochloric chloride. And then again, silver oxide plus sulfuric acid. The metal is silver and sulfuric becomes sulfate. I've then got for the challenge to write the complete neutralisation equation. So the other products there, it is a carbonate. So as well as copper nitrate, metal, nitric acid, nitrate, because it's a carbonate, you're going to form water and carbon dioxide. So pause again, just check you've got those written in. Now, the whole idea of today's lesson is we're going to write symbol equations for neutralisation reactions. So far, you will have looked at word equations. So we're going to look at the structure of the pH scale. We've done that. We're then going to look at writing word equations and using top, swap, drop to write ionic formula. They're both recaps, but I've added some things into this video just in case you can't remember. That's fine. And then we're going to get on to the crux of this video, which is we're going to write some symbol equations for neutralisation reactions. So, if you need a bit of extra practice naming your salts, if you found question 3A, B and C tough on the do now, you can pause the video here and you've got the success criteria on the right. So pause now. You've then got the answers to those there for you to check, okay? So you can go through checking all 5 answers again, pause the video. I've then got, if you wanted some practice writing entire neutralisation reactions, so the other products, you can then use this again, okay? Just you look at the difference in the success criteria this time is I've added a third step. So you just need to think about, is it a salt and water, or a salt and hydrogen, or a salt, carbon dioxide and water? Just notice, keep naming that salt. Don't write salt, keep naming the salt. So use the metal and the acid. Here are your answers to those ones by there. So again, just pause the video for you to check at this point whether you've got those correct. Now we are going to look at some ionic formulas, so we're going to use the top, swap, drop. So we're going to do lithium oxide first, which I've got here. So the first stage is in the top is that instead of having pluses and minuses, I need only numbers. Remember that no number in the case of lithium here equals a 1, and I'm just going to delete the minus. So I'm going to end up with Li1O2. So that's top done. After top, I'm going to swap. And then after swap, I'm going to drop Li2O1. We don't need to write the little 1, so it's just going to be Li2O. So let's look at another one now, if you've just had a chance to pause that and go through that. On this next one now, we're going to be looking at magnesium chloride. So again, I'm going to start in the same place. Maybe in this one, you might want to pause the video, have a quick go and a check. So instead of Mg2 plus and Cl minus, for top, to get rid of those pluses and minuses, I'm going to have Mg2Cl1. I'm then going to top, then swap, and then I'm going to drop. And just a reminder, we don't need to write the little 1. So we'll end up with MgCl2. So I'm now going to move on to the next slide, where there are some ones for you to practice. Okay, and again, just pause the video once they come up. So pause the video on this slide and have a go at writing the ionic formula of these 5 compounds. Okay, so here are the answers for those 5 ionic formula questions. For calcium chloride, you should have ended up with CaCl2. For sodium oxide, you should have ended up with Na2O. Potassium chloride, KCl. Sodium sulfate, Na2SO4. The trick here is just to think of the SO4 all together. So you kind of think of that as a bracket round it. Because I've only got one, I don't need a bracket. But that becomes really important in the next one, because I've got calcium hydroxide. So I've got Ca2 plus and OH minus. Well, just a reminder that if you've got a compound ion, you must need the brackets to say that everything in that bracket has been times by 2. So hopefully you're feeling good at this point in those. Just have another go through them if you're not sure. Just the one, maybe another practice, see if you can get those correct answers. Maybe if you're doing it with somebody else, just check next door with how they've got. Okay? Right, now we're going to move on to neutralisation reactions. So we're going to go through these really, really slowly for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we can get there. And there's 5 steps, okay? Now the first step is that we're going to write the correct word equation for the reaction. Well, I've got sodium hydroxide plus hydrochloric acid. So there is my correct word equation for that. Okay, so step 1 I've done there, okay, in doing so. I'm going to talk you through each step at a time. I'm then going to write the formula of the acid, okay. Now the formula of my acid, I've got hydrochloric acid, so instead of hydrochloric acid, my symbol equation is going to include HCl. Okay, this is the most simple of the acids to remember. So in my equation, this was the first thing I did, and I wrote that by there. Okay? The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use top swap drop to write the ionic formula for the base and the salt. Well, the first salt, well, let's start with the salt, NaCl. So I've got here my top swap and drop for NaCl. So I've used that ion sheet. I'm putting everything together so far, and you can see how I've done that. So I've got Na plus Cl. It's a nice easy one because they're just ones. And I've also done the same thing down here. There's a plus and a minus. It's just all the ones, and it's NaOH. So that's step 3 done, where I do top swap and drop. My next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add in any final products. Well, I can see that it is water, so I'm just going to add H2O on the end. Okay, nice and simple like that. And then finally, I'm going to balance the equation. Well, I can, if I count up element by element, I've got 1 sodium on the left, 1 on the right. I've got 1 chlorine on the left, 1 on the right. I've got 2 hydrogens on the left and 2 on the right. And I've got 1 oxygen on the left and 2 on the right. So that is completely balanced. I know there is a lot going on there, so you may need to pause the video and just have a look through that and just make sure you've got that example down. And then I'm going to do 2 more lovely and slowly again before you've got some practice to do. Okay, so next one. So again, iron plus hydrochloric acid. The first place I'm going to start is writing the correct word equation for the reaction. So I can see, because it's a metal on its own, I've got iron plus hydrochloric acid gives me iron chloride and hydrogen. Okay. My next thing is I'm going to write the formula of the acid. Okay, and I'm going to put that in my equation. So I've got hydrochloric acid, so I'm going to do HCl. So I'm going to put that there. Okay, HCl. I'm then going to write the ionic, use top swap drop to write the ionic formula for the base and the salt. Well, my base is just iron on its own, so I'm just going to write Fe. But I do need to do top swap drop to find my salt, okay? So just imagine that you haven't seen this yet, and the way that I would get there is by top swap drop in this sense, okay? So I've got Fe2 plus and Cl minus, so I go Fe2, Cl1, Fe1, Cl2, Fe, Cl2, okay? And then finally, I'm going to add the final products, and we can see those are either H2, H2O, or CO2. And that's done. Now, I've got all of my reactants correct at this point, but I need to check that my reaction is balanced, okay? So, at the moment, I've got one ion on the left and one ion on the right, so that is great, okay? But I've got one chlorine on the left and two chlorines on the right. So to fix that, I'm going to have to add a 2. Now I'm going to check if this is correct, and I can see that I've now got 2 hydrogens on the left and I've got 2 hydrogens on the right. So that has worked out perfectly now. So I've got a balanced symbol equation. Okay? Again, pause it, have a look, see how I got there. And then we'll do one more together before I'm going to give you a load to practice. Okay? Alright. Last one. We have got sodium carbonate and nitric acid. Okay? So again, step number 1, write the correct word equation. So sodium carbonate plus nitric acid will give me sodium nitrate plus water plus carbon dioxide. So a little bit more complicated this time. I'm also using nitric acid. So instead of whereas before I was writing HCl, I'm now going to put into my equation and just focus on what I'm showing you here. I'm going to put HNO3. Okay? So I've done step 1, I've written the correct word equation. Step 2, I have put the symbols in. My third step now is top, swap and drop. Okay? So for Na2, for sodium carbonate, I'm going to start with Na plus and CO3 2 minus. Top, get rid of those charges. So instead of the plus, I've got a 1 and a 2. Swap them, drop them. So I get Na2CO3. And then on the other side, I've got Na plus and NO3 minus. I've got Na1, NO3 1, Na1, NO3 1. It's all the ones, so it's a nice easy one. Okay? Top, swap, drop. I then have got water and carbon dioxide. So I've got H2O plus CO2. Okay, to reflect that. And the last thing I'm going to do then is I go into balance. Okay, so it's a bit more complicated. Let's start with sodium. 2 on the left, 1 on the right. So let's put a 2 there. Okay, let's now go to carbon. Let's check carbon. I got 1 carbon on the left, 1 carbon on the right. Brilliant. So what's it? And then go into check oxygen. Well, I've got 6 on the left, 6, 7, 9 on the right. So I've got a bit of a problem, but that doesn't seem easy to fix with 6 and 9, so I'm not going to do that yet. Then let's look at hydrogen. 1 on the left, 2 on the right. So let's put a 2 there. We'll check out nitrogens. 2 on the left, 2 on the right, sorry. So they're correct. So let's count up our oxygens. We've got 3 plus 6 is 9, and 6 plus 1 is 7, plus 2 is 9. So that is now balanced perfectly. Okay? Now I know that this may be difficult. When we're back together next, I'll go through this in more depth again, but have your best shot now at these next questions. Okay? So there are 6 for you to have a go at. So I think you should pause it now. What I will do is I will now flick through the answers and you can pause the answers to see them. Okay? So here are the answers to the first 2. Here are the answers to questions 3 and 4. And here are the answers to question 5 and 6. I hope you found this useful. If you've got any problems, come and find me and we can go through it. Bye-bye.